FM. Hello, patrons. It is me, Chris Spangle, founder and dear leader of We Are Libertarians podcast network and host of the Chris Spangle Show and like 9 million other podcasts. I want to give you a little bit of a state of the state address about what we're working on behind the scenes. We are not quitting. I think I posted a message about how we're not doing Saturday shows. I think some people kind of took that as, oh, well, they're not quitting. And we're not. We're actually going to be creating more content than ever before. But it feels different, so I feel like I should just be candid with you and tell you what's going on. We have several, life evolves, and we've been doing this for 10 years now, and when we started, it was Chris, Creighton, and I sitting around, and then Greg, and had this cast of characters just kind of hanging out in my living room. And I was thinking about the podcast space yesterday, and how I kind of despise where it's going, which leads kind of to some of the challenges that we're facing, right? The early days of podcasting were like Don and Drew, just this married couple talking about their lives, and two guys, one brain, two friends who were prison guards who just kind of talked about what it was like to be a prison guard. And they weren't trying to make it anything. They were just trying to hang out and have fun and, enjoyed the community that they built around their podcast and the Mike O'Meara Show, which was this professional radio show that became a podcast and like shared something really special with their audience. And that it really inspired the early days of We Are Libertarians. In a lot of ways, up until 2018, we were a comedy podcast more than we were like a current event show. And I made the conscious decision, especially after Greg left, to reposition the show from hijinks and nonsense to give I really was like, all right, what am I offering listeners? Because I got better at podcasting, and I realized people actually want something for the time. It's no longer just sort of this thing as competition, and it's just gotten more intense, right? The podcast space and news podcast space specifically, it's like you've got so much professionalized content that you're competing with that if you're just sort of like a five dudes sitting on a couch talking about something, your average listener that's coming into the marketplace now doesn't want that. They want like consistent, packaged, polished material. Which is why the Chris Spangle Show has really been 20 to 30-minute interviews, very consistent content. I don't think I've ever put out as many shows as I'm putting out right now, with the interviews between, nonprofits kind of peeking into the problems in our society and the Young Voices interviews about, here's what's happening with student loans, and then our occasional panel shows. But that is a marked shift from, us goofing around on the couch. And I have to say, I really miss that. So we've been talking for months about where do we want to take it, because we just kind of, Harry, Reinhold, myself specifically, definitely Harry and I, just like getting together every Saturday morning and talking on Zoom, it doesn't have the same allure. We kind of did it when the pandemic necessitated it, and it is kind of fun, but it's not the same as like hanging around, drinking beers, talking about politics like friends, where you feel like you're sitting at the kitchen table. So Harry and I have been talking for a few months about a studio. And Harry is house rich. He has almost three houses. One of them is empty. And he is graciously turning his living room of that house into a studio that we can use for this, for his show, Low Key Wall, for streaming, for whatever. And we're going to be building that out. Thank you to Jason Doolitte, who has provided a tremendous amount of money to help us furnish it and just kind of get it started. We would love for you to help if you can. Venmo is at Chris Spangle, or just contact me. We've got PayPal, all that kind of stuff. You want to chip in. We may do some sort of thing where like you can pay to have your name on the wall, just to kind of raise money to fund decorations and just kind of make it look like a really fun space that's cool that we can use. And I've got a lot of equipment in the basement in the cable cave that I'm going to take over there and set it all up. But the goal with that is that we're going to bring back We Are Libertarians, and that's what we're going to call it. And we changed from We Are Libertarians to the Chris Spangle Show a couple years ago because of the brand confusion. First, I was more liberal than Rimzo and Brian, and they kept having to defend them. They're on the network, but they were having, like, why does he have Trump derangement syndrome? And they didn't, right? So that was part of it. Secondly, I kind of wanted the freedom to do other stuff. But it is funny after 2 years how people still call it We Are Libertarians. Nobody really calls it the Chris Spangle Show. Because I think that early show was just so indelible and imprinted in people's minds. But I want to bring back the spirit of that, where we're just kind of hanging out and doing a show, but we just cannot commit to doing it every week like we did, or 2 weeks, 2 times a week like we were there for a long time. Harry and I have they're not toddlers, they're almost going to school, but it's really difficult as your life gets, you just have more stuff going on. So it's been really hard for us to meet on Saturdays. Gunther's birthday party in like April or May just totally threw us off doing Saturday shows. And we've been trying to get our schedules together, but between vacations and parties and stuff, like Harry and I haven't been able to do a show together since before Gunther's birthday. So Harry is alive. And so we just had a call like a month ago and said, all right, how do we fix this? Because, we're still going to do the show. We're not quitting. But it's obviously not working trying to meet at 10 a.m. on Saturdays, and through the week is difficult. So we're just going to schedule like once or twice a month to meet together and hang out, record a couple of episodes, and just kind of bring back that spirit of the show and have fun and talk about politics and get you guys involved too. But 1 to 3 shows a month is not nearly enough to satisfy like the modern listener, right? You have to be more consistent and polished and professionalized than the old show. So we're going to continue to do the Chris Spangle Show in the way that I've been doing it, with the short interviews about topical news and nonprofits. I'm going to mix in the panel show, We Are Libertarians, The Swamp, History of Modern Politics, Liberty Explained, all those shows. That will all still be in the feed for the Chris Spangle Show. You can still hear We Are Libertarians here on the feed. But we're trying to figure out how to produce more content in a smarter way that works with our lives as it kind of, the scheduling gets a little bit harder. So look for We Are Libertarians to return in the fall. It will be in the Chris Spangle Show feed. It'll be here in the Patreon feed. It'll be its own feed like Low Key Wall, or one of our other shows. Because it's going to be just sort of its own little bucket, like The Swamp Explained. Yet it's still part of the big show. Just trying to, make it easy for people. If they don't want to listen to the short interviews, they don't have to hear that. Then, if they just want to hear the fun and the grab ass, then they can just go listen to that feed, right? So that is a little bit about that. Big thank you to Jason Doolitte for helping us set up the new Doolittle Studios, which is kind of funny because we will do little in those studios. But I'm really excited about it because I'm excited to kind of hang out with my friends again and see everybody. I'm going tonight out to Boss Hog, and we're going to hang out with Brian and Jeremiah. We just needed a connection point to kind of do that kind of content again. Maybe a little less rowdy. We are family men now. And it gets a little sad when middle-aged men start acting like children. Go look at the National LP Twitter if you need an example. So we probably won't call the CIA on James Neese or get co-hosts kicked off of airplanes, but we are, going to kind of just have fun with it. So long story short, like I said, we've got to satisfy several different demands, right? We still want to have fun personally, but we also have to be consistent, and we can't do that if we just, bail on all these interviews and I'll do like 2 shows a month, and that just, I can't afford it because I make money off of ad revenue. I think you as patrons have come to expect at least 1 show a week. And so these interviews kind of help fit into my life and the scape because I can record them, when I've got holes in my schedule, and edit them. And for the first time ever for the Chris Spangle Show, I have banked episodes where I have like 4 weeks of shows already recorded and cut. You guys get those in the Patreon, so you've heard them already. But yeah, that's kind of crazy because we're always last minute forever. So, We Are Libertarians returns this fall in person with all the co-hosts having fun. Sadly, Chris Galt is moving away to Michigan. Creighton is in New York. So the 2 original co-hosts are gone. As far as the other shows, nothing is going away. I have been fairly inconsistent with podcasting and platforms. My how-to podcast show, I'm going to be more consistent with it. I've got to. And I'll explain why in a minute. And History of Modern Politics, Matt Whitliff and I have, we're about 3 or 4 episodes into the new season that we've written and recorded. That we'll start releasing those soon here on the Patreon feed and for HMP Plus members. And we're going to mix in some interviews, too, with historians and history podcasters, kind of taking a current event, not necessarily to get them to talk about politics, but like we did with the Afghan withdrawal and My History Can Beat Up Your Politics. I forget his name, but he came on and talked about leaving Saigon and leaving Afghanistan and the parallels there. So we're going to do a few more of those. And I told you a couple years ago that I would be shifting more into history, and that has only been accelerated in terms of my interest. And so here's why. I hate the libertarian movement, and I think if you subscribe to subscribe to our Patreon, you probably do too. Like, libertarianism is more than defending the right of one degenerate in New Hampshire and his right to tweet stuff. Yeah, you can say whatever you want. I don't agree with using, the National Party Twitter to just poke people in the eye. I think it's bad politics. There's a complete lack of strategy with this. I mean, I guess you could call them libertarians, but they're really, at the end of the day, they're alt-right guys who, once you scratch the surface, don't really... I had a conversation with one recently who was essentially a monarchist who thought that classical liberalism was a bad idea, that free speech was a bad idea, that protecting culture by using the government and having a strong central power was necessary and important. He's a devoted Michael Malice guy, loves Hoppe. Like, these people are not libertarians. And yet we all pretend that they are, and they're in charge of the Libertarian National Party. And, that New Hampshire tweet about Meghan McCain, our local candidates had to defend that because we had fundraisers and events, and people are bringing it up. It's like they started the caucus around James Weeks and how embarrassing that was, and then became James Weeks. So I really have no desire to be associated with them or the word libertarianism, to be honest. And politics in general has just gone that way. Starting in 2002, it's totally different than when I was coming up. It's totally different than when I started We Are Libertarians. We were kind of... I was always taking shit from local libertarians for being too edgy And I wasn't edgy at all compared to some of this stuff. Like, we were considered right wing, and now we're considered center left in the libertarian world. So it's just sort of there isn't the same appetite for orthodox libertarianism, or what I'd call kind of a centrist or moderate approach, where you're polite to people. And yes, you have disagreements with people, but you're not willing to call them war pigs and mock their death. That just doesn't have the same zip that it used to. So as a business, We Are Libertarians has kind of hit a ceiling. And I've had to go through a little bit of a grieving process over the last couple of years, because I'd spent 10 years of my life working to build this into my full-time job and to become a political commentator. And I've had to kind of just accept that that's not necessarily going to be the case. This will always be a side project, a passion project for me, and a nice second job. But, with life changes and wife and kid, and just the stress of constantly reading the news, and my just complete unwillingness to violate my own personal values to become a grifter, I think we've just sort of seen the ceiling of where We Are Libertarians can go as a financial vehicle. So I've had to kind of find other streams of income, because I have a good day job. I don't know how long my day job will last, and when my day job ends, I don't want to go work for somebody else. I want to podcast full time. So, so We Are Libertarians plays a part in that. Which is why I started podcasting in platforms. I've started podcast consulting, and I really enjoy teaching people podcasting and helping them get their stuff started. And, I need kind of one other thing. The pat down is great. I get a little bit of money for the pat down. I'm never going to become a comedian. I just don't have any kind of desire to do that. I'm not on Pat's level in terms of skill and talent. Just like I'm not at the same level as Jonah Goldberg in talent and skill in political analysis. So you just sort of have to look and go, all right, what are you good at? And I've always loved history, so I'm going to be starting a new history project geared towards Indiana, and I'm going to be really diving into history, modern politics in an aggressive way. And I said a couple years ago that I would be moving more in the history direction like Dan Carlin. And I totally understand why Dan Carlin went from a talk radio guy to where he's at now. You just sort of, the more you read history, the less worried you get about things, and the more you roll your eyes, and you just sort of go, this is the same thing that we've always been dealing with. And it kind of takes away some of your ideological or, not naivete. Maybe that's some of the word. I'm trying to think of the word. I keep forgetting. Idealistic. That's the word. Kind of takes away some of your idealistic nature. And when I started We Are Libertarians, I was really negative about my personal prospects in terms of my personal life and having a good life and making money and having a wife and kids. I've never been more positive about my personal life, but I was really sure I could change the world, and now I don't think that's true at all, and the world is saying, please don't change me. So yeah, I mean, I'm going to dive into history and see if I can build a We Are Libertarians for Indiana history as another stream of income, and along with my podcast consulting and teaching people podcasting. So I'm going to be doing a behind the paywall casual conversations about building that new project for podcasting and platforms. So go over to podcastingandplatforms.com and sign up if you want to hear that stuff. But I don't want anybody to take this as I'm quitting or that we're changing anything. That's the whole point. I'm going to continue to produce We Are Libertarians podcast network, produce the political shows and the current event shows as long as I have patrons. So if patrons go away, then I mean, it's just a market signal that nobody's interested in what you're doing. right? So, but I think people kind of took it as me quitting when one patron quit and was like, well, if you're not doing your show anymore, then I'm not interested, and that's not the case. So we just have to kind of format the program in a way that works for my life, Harry's life, our contributors' lives. Sarah has a baby, Trisha has a baby, lots of young families, and that makes panel shows every week a lot harder because people have scheduling challenges. So that's why I've had to do a lot more of the interview stuff, and I really enjoyed it. I really like talking to some of these young contributors who kind of have, they're still idealistic. They haven't been ruined and sullied by 20 years of life. So I'm excited to see them change and grow and turn into old cranks like me. So, yeah, I'd love to have your comments on this. I mean, I want to hear back my own words, what you guys heard me say. I'm just sort of ranting and venting a little bit. I hope you're excited to kind of hear the old format come back a little bit. I hope that you're enjoying the content that will be in CSS. I hope that you'll stick with me and support my new history project. I'm going to set up a brand new separate Patreon. It's going to be a whole different business and venture with local events and local podcasts and storytelling podcasts. I've never done a storytelling podcast. I've always wanted to try one. So I'm going to dive into that a little bit. And I've always done just straight talk like this and interviews and kind of easy podcasting, if I can be honest. Doing a storytelling podcast is hard because you've got to do multiple interviews, know where to craft the story, you got to research it. And so I kind of want to challenge myself a little bit with a different new skill. So, but that's going to be slow going too, because I've got all these different things. So, yeah, I'd love to have you. I'm not going to tell you the names yet, because I don't want anybody stealing the URLs. But stay tuned to my social media for that stuff. Yeah, and once I start that history network, HMP and Profiles in Liberty by Caleb Franz may move over to that network from this network, just because it's a little bit of a better fit, but we'll see. I don't know. I haven't decided. So, all right. Please go comment in the Patreon, or shoot me an email. Love to hear back, chris@chrisspangle.com. And as always, thank you for supporting us. You guys are great supporters, and always willing to go on this journey of adjusting and changing the show. Jeremiah likes to joke that I should just stop and do a daily show again. And I'd love to do a daily political show. No, I wouldn't. I actually wouldn't. I've tried it. And the reality is it's very stressful, and it's a lot of work, and people don't care. So if, like, people are saying, I really just need to hear from you once a week, then you got to listen to that. So that's sort of important. So, all right, everybody, thanks so much. We really do appreciate it. Like I said, we're not going anywhere. We're not quitting. Please don't drop your donations. Please don't quit your Patreon. In fact, if you could increase it, that would be great, because that will help us pay for the new studio, and continue to, grow this. I'm actually thinking of adding one show, Liberty Memes, maybe adding a show about their charitable efforts to the network here really soon. Dave and I are really close to finishing that. So yeah, we're not going anywhere. We're just I'm just giving you an update on why things sound different and what you can expect. So thank you for being a patron. I really do appreciate it. Love you. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.